Hey friends, I'm Daniel Nesbitt, and this is Designing a Sans Serif Typeface. And we're back with one more quick episode where I'm just going to go through, get through the numbers and the few punctuation points that we have today, and then we'll call it good. I'm actually really happy with how this face turned out, to be honest with you. It's certainly been full of its challenges, as you've noticed, but I think we're getting there. So, just kind of being on the home stretch here, I think we'll get this looking pretty good. So, one of the things that I've kind of learned since I've started working on this face and doing this this series of episodes really is I did kind of skip some important parts along the way, namely, when you're designing type, you're really designing a collection of letters. You're not designing each individual letter like you've been watching me do. Instead, what's ideal is that you would go through and design this, also keeping in mind about how it's going to look as you have it in words and paragraphs and things of that nature. And yeah, I kind of skipped over that step, and it's probably a key one, I would imagine. And it's something that we'll kind of go back, and I guess we'll take care of this a little bit backwards, if you will. But it's something that I at least wanted to address, particularly because in future episodes, probably doing different fonts, you're going to see me do that a little bit differently. So by the time you're watching this, if I have another typeface out, and you're kind of wondering what the deal was here. I just kind of wanted to be upfront about that. I've actually, in a wonderful way, learned some great things about type and about how the process works and just better ways to do things. Honestly, it's part of the reason why I was doing this whole series from the get-go. Was I wanted a place to not only learn but to take others along that same journey as well, to see what I'm doing right, see what I'm doing wrong. Obviously it goes without saying that if you've watched a few of these episodes, you've probably watched me make a few mistakes along the way, but it is certainly with the hope that not only I learn from these things, but perhaps you pick up a tip or two as well. So hopefully my mistakes were not made in vain on this channel. But yeah, I honestly... as I go through, I'm really happy with how this set of letters and I guess numbers, as I'm doing these right now, have turned out. Honestly, I know that I'm probably going to be making some adjustments as I go here. Just trying to keep in mind how this is going to work with words and letters and that kind of thing. But I think it's gonna work. It's nothing more than a gut. As I get all my overshoots taken care of here. It's nothing more than a gut feeling. I have to be, I guess, honest and upfront about that. Part of the reason, though, is that this isn't really anything that's, getting out there crazy as far as something unique or different. I mean, this is a pretty basic sans serif font. It's I'm sure you probably could find ones that look very similar to this one out there, and that's fine. I'm totally okay with that. But it is, for me, serving a wonderful purpose of just being what I can learn, or actually being the vehicle to I guess learn more about this process and what I need to do, if that makes sense. I know I'm kind of rambly as I'm doing two things at once here. But yeah, it's I guess overall what I'm saying is that this certainly has shaped up well, and I think it's going to end up being a pretty decent face. So just getting all this wrapped up here. Now I am kind of noticing on my round shapes that it is getting a little bit boxy as I go to the higher weight here. I noticed it on the 9 first, but I'm assuming the rest of these probably would benefit from it as well. So I'm just going to go through and grab these handles, and I'm just bumping them, I guess, into themselves by about 5 points. We'll see how that works. I also noticed while I was over here that my 9 needed some love on the side bearings there. I'll go ahead and do it on this one too. Oops. I think that'll help things out a little bit. Actually, while we're here, one thing I noticed, gotta fix. So I forget if I had mentioned this in the past episode or not, but one thing that I am doing with my Bezier handles is also I'm making sure that they are in 90-degree segments, if you will. The reason that I'm doing that is that it's actually more, it's a lot easier to control curves and shapes and things like that. You could technically, I suppose, go through and draw points wherever. No one's stopping you. But as you start going further and further into your typeface, it gets more and more difficult to keep track of those, especially if things are moving back and forth between a heavier weight and a lightweight like this. So, it's easy enough to hold shift down on your keyboard, keep these at a 90 or 0-degree angle. Every now and then, you've probably noticed I will do maybe like a 45. I think, yeah, I did it on the S. I guess technically it's not a 45. So it's one of those things, it's a rule, but rules are made to be broken. But I figured it's worth pointing out because it's just one of those like little tricks, I guess, that you learn just to make things a bit easier on yourself. The other thing that I'm doing too is I'm also making these punctuation marks just larger. I'm just kind of going with that. We'll see how that plays out here. So with that, I'm gonna go through and get all my side bearings done. That's pretty much going to complete the heavier weight and the lighter weight. Now I could go through and do a lot more punctuation, and it's possible at a later date I might, but I kind of felt that, getting, I think, what am I, like 20 episodes in here, that I didn't want this to take up too much more time into more extended pieces of a typeface. I kind of like this idea of just keeping it simple. And I think as this goes, you're probably catching on that it's easy to begin iterating different things if you're getting into diacritics, if you're getting into special language support. Obviously, once you start getting some of these shapes down, especially like square shapes, circle shapes, dots, dashes, what have you, that it's easier to start going through and just figuring out how to do things. One example is like if you're going to put an umlaut on this here, I could go through and just use my my period. Once I find it, there we go. So I could basically grab this, and I'm just doing this for the sake of demonstration here, not saying that this would be the final case, but there you go, a U with an umlaut over the top of it, or even taking those two periods and then flipping them into a colon, or a period and a comma into a semicolon. You get the idea. So, there's a lot you can do and a lot of directions you can go from here once you have the typeface set up. But jumping back over to my lightweight here, one thing that I am going to do is I'm just going to start typing out some stuff. So one of the things you can type out is hamburger fontsive? Hamburger fontsive? I don't know. I've never actually pronounced this word out loud before. So it does kind of cut it off a little bit weird up there. I'm going to use the bottom of my screen here. I think that's going to be a little bit easier to deal with. So one of the things that I want to start getting into is the side bearings for things. And if I just jump into like my F here, I'm just kind of noticing, I've got some issues with this. And in the case of the F, I really don't have the greatest side bearings set up. So what I want to do to start for that is we're going to do a couple control characters here. We're going to do an N and an O. For this, I can actually use the top part, and that'll be a little bit easier. So to start with these two, the reason that we're using these two is you have a square shape on either side of these. You got straight line, and then in the O you've got two curves here. And pretty much every character that you're going to be dealing with, or almost every character you're going to be dealing with, is going to be using either one of these two or a combo of these two. So it's really helpful to get these things spaced out to begin with. So that's something that I had already kind of done leading up to this point. I do think it's a little bit loose though as I was going. So one thing I'm going to do right off the bat is I'm just going to tighten these up a little bit, and we're going to do 60 and 40. Now, if you were paying attention, I think maybe I had even mentioned this, but one of the nice things about glyphs is that you can go through and you can apply what I just did here to multiple glyphs, which really is helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to select, actually we'll just start with the H for now. And rather than remembering those, I can actually just type in a lowercase n for either side of that. And now the H is going to take the side bearings of the N and it's going to auto update it. So anytime I change, if I ever do change the side bearings on my lowercase n here, it's going to update it on there. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm also going to go and choose all of the characters that I would be putting this side bearing on the left side. And since I selected all those at once, I can actually just go through and type it in there. I actually just realized I forgot the M too. I want to make sure that we get that. And then for the other side, you can just grab a few of these here and do that. Actually, probably could even do the A too. And actually I'm going to do the I and the L as well. We'll see. I may come back and adjust some of these. I do have some pretty cool tricks that I can use to further refine some of these as well, because you can actually use math in this, which is pretty sweet. So the other thing that I'm going to do then is to go through and same thing, but this time with the O. So we'll do that there. And then I'm going to grab these. So for these letters, it'd be the round on that side. For the S, we're just going to do O on both sides of that. For the R, I'm going to do N and O on that. We'll see if that works. For the P, we'll do O on that. Actually, I'm probably just going to go through and, because I know I'm going to be missing some here. So just as I jump through real quick, pretty much just going through and to the best of my ability assigning one or the other to either side of these. So when I'm all done here, if I haven't forgotten any, I should have everything set up. Now for angled ones like the K, I'm going to go and use the O for that, but it is possible that I change that later or do something special for those. We're just going to kind of see where that puts us right now. So for all of these, I'm just going to go O and O on that. All right. And then for this one, for the sake of doing something, I'm just going to do the N on both sides of that. So all of these little warning signs here are just telling me that my heavier weight doesn't have any of these set up yet. I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. So if I jump back into my preview and we do the N test and the O test, that's looking pretty good. And I'm thinking a lot of these are going to start to kind of fall into place. But if we go back to my initial word here, so hamburger responsive, again, I'm probably slaughtering the name of that, but I guess, oh well. So need to, all right, so it looks like my F got a little messed up here, so we're going to delete that and let it kind of recalculate itself there. So there is things like the E and the F that are just in the case of this particular font, they're not going to play nice. One thing that I can try and do just to start, though, is maybe because we have the F with kind of this open space here, maybe it works a little bit better with the O side bearing instead. I'm going to do the same with the T. And I mean, you'll notice at a glance, this actually gets us pretty close. If anything, this might even be too tight, depending on how I want to use this typeface. If I just bring this down a little bit, actually that might not be too bad at all. But for the sake of trying things, we're actually going to go, and I'm just going to bump these up by 5 points on either side. So we're going to do that with both of these. Now what's cool is when I go back to this, if I did this right, I might have to refresh all of them. There is a trick to this. Let's see if I can remember it. I think it's update metrics. Yes. All right, so now if I go back here, I did bump this out a little bit. So now each of these, if I just go through and check real quick, now they're updated to my new things. So this is the benefit that I was talking about, where with just a couple of control characters, the N and the O, which are two very common ones, I'm basically able to go through and set up the side bearings into something that starts to look pretty good. This is where there's going to be a little bit of back and forth. Honestly, there's a ton of different ways, or a ton of different, I guess probably schools of thought on this. I mean, for me, this is just a matter of trial and error. That's really what my trick is. I need to learn my shortcuts too a little bit. So it's just going to be some back and forth. It's going to be typing out some text. There are some wonderful resources out there. I know Jonathan Heffler actually has a really good one for those who are interested, that he actually created a proof sheet with a whole bunch of different words and phrases and sentences and controls and what have you. I believe it's an InDesign doc, and it's also on GitHub. I will link it in the comment section below here, or the description below here on this episode. But things like that are super useful for starting to proof your typeface, because you really don't get an idea of how it's working until you start to interact with the characters, start to see it in sentence form or word form or even paragraph form. And as you go from there, it's really going to help you decide if anything needs to change or if anything's working or not working. And then you can go from there and really start to adjust things. What I've learned is that a lot of things creep out of the woodwork once you start working with your type that way, because we could go through and, I mean, we could look at any one of these characters individually and they might look wonderful individually, but the one thing that everyone always reminds me of particular is that a typeface is a system of beautiful fonts, and you know, that's what you have to keep in mind. So one thing I'm going to do real quick here is I am going to do a little bit of the math that I was talking about. And one of the things that I'm wondering is if I just bump that O in a little, or do some multiplying. So basically what I'm saying is for the R there, to take the side bearing, the right side bearing of the O, multiply it by 0.75, and that's going to be the side bearing of the R. And so we're going to see how that works. It does seem to kind of play a little bit nicer with the N there. I kind of figured it was going to be a little bit weird with rounder shapes like the O here. I think that's fine. I actually did it. Maybe it didn't do exactly what I thought it was going to. Because that actually should be a little bit closer. So maybe, oops, there we go. Let me make sure I get on the right character here. So try this one more time. Let's try, it's still not going to do it. I know there's a trick to this. If I maybe just do -5, does that? No, still doesn't want to play with it either. All right, I may have to do some looking up. But I know there's ways that I can handle that. Actually, I have one more. So did I have to do this? No, still doesn't want to play nice with me. Well, I guess that is what it is. But anyway, I guess the good part is, if you want to look at it this way, we do have all of the letters set up for the heavyweight and the lightweight. So in the next episodes, we're going to dive a little bit more into proofing, and we'll get mostly into side bearings probably for the next episode here. Eventually, we will start getting into things like everybody's favorite topic, kerning. But we're still a little ways away from that, and I guess overall, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, especially for just a simple and basic typeface. As always, if you've been enjoying this series, I would immensely appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button. If you have any input on this, by all means, hit up the comments section. Like I said earlier in the episode, this is definitely a place not only for me to learn, but for everyone else to learn. So obviously the more voices, the better. And, hopefully there's something that we can all take away from this and perhaps apply into your own projects, for example. So as always, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode.